So when I did the 2TB video, people were quick to point out that this has more storage than their own computer. And hey, mine as well, right? This really was a really dumb kind of project. But then people started kicking around the idea of what if I booted Windows from this, since it's got the same storage as a PC. And there exists third-party software which lets you boot Windows from USB devices. And hey, I'm down to try that. But this guy at the moment is doing some work for me, so I don't really want to mess with it too much. And besides, these really high storage iPods can be unreliable at times, and since we're doing something real dumb, we just want all the reliability as possible. So enter my big Chungo 80 gig spec 5.5 gen, top tier iPod basically, and this is my regular driver. I'm usually using the 7th gen iPod Touch. I love that thing, but if I'm not using that, I use this. Super safe build, iFlash board, 256 gigs, which is super stable for this model, and the big Chungus battery in the big Chungus case for that double Chungus goodness. I really like this thing. So my software of choice for this kind of stuff is Win2USB. It's free, it's third party, and it works really nice. So I went ahead and plugged this in, formatted it so Windows can see it, and sector problems. So people think I'm a technician since I'm fixing iPods around here. I'm not. I'm a musician. I professionally play drums for a living, and usually when I hit a snag like this, I'll do a little bit of reading, try and figure it out, and then usually make something else for the week. But I was really keen on trying to boot Windows off of an iPod, so I figured, hey, let's try a standard one, but that's when it got difficult. Windows 10 needs 32 gigs of hard drive storage to work, and in iPod land, that could be a little bit tricky. These guys, they've only got 20. This guy works. It's only got 30. This guy's busy doing stuff, and my 6th gen, which we put a battery in the hardest iPod to open episode, is actually not running properly. It boots and it works, technically, but then it just won't work properly, so that's out of the question. So before I gave up on the idea, I realized I had one more iPod laying around. The thickest color screen iPod Apple ever made, the 4th gen Photo, 60 gigs, mate. And she runs. She's a runner. But I'm doubtful this will work for another reason. This is a successor to this guy, and they made a big jump in technology at this point. These 5th gens had hard drives that look like this. Can you see that connected there? These guys were using drives with this old manky business, just like the first ever iPods. And this guy being a 60 gig, check this out. Someone's been in here. Yeah, it was me. I put a 3rd gen battery in it because that's all I had. This thing's so jank. To get that 60 gigs, they had to put a dual platter drive in there. It is so much thicker than the 30 gig one. That's so manky, I love it, and it's so noisy. Yes, I'm doing this the cheaters way, no one yell at me, right? Don't do it! So with no confidence at all, I took this genuinely janky third-party cable, plugged it in, and sure enough, the software kicked on and sat at 0% for a very long time. At this point, I was so sure that it wasn't going to work that I was planning something else for this week's video. And then it started climbing up, and then it sat at 95% for a really long time again, when I resumed thinking about other things to do for this week's video. But it worked! It finished doing its thing. I didn't think I was going to be getting to this point, but now we needed a PC to plug this into. So you're probably thinking, because I'm all Apple here, oh, he doesn't have a PC. Well, let me say I've built a few PCs before, mate. Yeah, my mum says I do pretty good. Overclocking, piece of cake, mate. Usually leads to a successful deluting as well. The flames were because it was a Pentium. It's pretty easy, mate. I got all the secret tricks, it makes computer. I'm like the computer whisperer. You just dump all the bits in there, don't you? Just put the case back together. I've never gotten one to turn on, but I just figured that computers aren't real anyway. Joking aside, I've actually got a Ryzen 7 RTX 2070 rig that I like to play games on, which is what I use to put the software onto this. But I wasn't too keen on being too silly with that, but I've got a little computer that I built that I use as a server. It's super simple. i3 9100, 16 gigs Corsair RAM. It's got a 1 gig Samsung SATA SSD, couple of mechanical drives, and an eBay store had a sale on a GTX 1660, so I threw that in just for fun. I went into the BIOS and made sure that the USB was what it was going to boot from, and then I made sure to yank out all the hard drives out of this computer. I wanted anything that happened to be because of the iPod. And you know what? I plugged it in, flicked it on, and when I saw that Windows logo, I don't think I've ever been happy to see a Windows logo before. But then I got really sick of looking at the Windows logo and ran off to make sausage rolls. I thought it was just going to freeze and not do anything. But sure enough, the setup got there. I logged in with my Microsoft account. Hello! We had it hooked up to the internet. It even downloaded my wallpaper, my weird taskbar location, because I use Mac and give Windows no respect at all. It was slow. It was so slow, but I was at the desktop. At this point, I couldn't believe it. Went to the properties of C drive, and while it literally took an age for it to load, there it was. My C drive is an Apple iPod. Okay, it's 55 gigs. I couldn't believe it. And holy wow, it was noisy. This guy is... You could hear it across the room. These double height old school drives are hilarious. So at this point, I was like, oh, I've already won. Like, this is beyond what I thought it would ever be able to do. And I thought, why not? Let's go all in. We're already doing it dirty, so why not use Microsoft Edge? And I downloaded Steam and Cinebench. I even downloaded GeForce Experience to download all the drivers for the graphics card. It just took an absolute age. It cut me so long. But then Steam turned out to be the best benchmark ever because it shows you how fast the drive was working. And at some points, it was sitting at 20 megabytes a second. That's what I'd call totally tolerable. But most of the time, it was sitting down at like 5 or 6 megabytes a second and then down into the bytes. Tiny little nibbles. When this started happening, the backdrop was flickering a bit, and that made me think that was because Windows was asking for more data, and this guy had to stop what it was doing to go do that. But sure enough, I had this computer fully updated. Windows was done updating. We had 3D Mark and Cinebench on here, and I could benchmark this setup against the standard SSD. I know these benchmarks don't really test hard drive speeds, but I just did it anyway. Cinebench, tie, no difference. 3D Mark, this guy won by like a few points. The iPod technically won. But that's because the benchmark doesn't start scoring until the benchmark loads. This thing was so friggin' slow. By the time the first benchmark was done loading, the SSD had done all the benchmarks. But I couldn't believe it. I was using this computer. Everything I was downloading off the net was onto this. I didn't download it on another machine and then just beam it over. So I figured, screw it. Enough of these simulations. Let's actually put a game on here. There's only 2 games I play, Rust and Rocket League. And that first startup of Rocket League, when it's doing those little updates, oh man, the wait is real. Like, big time, the wait is real. But I got in, and like, the first thing I did was go straight to an online match, and it took about 6 times longer to load than normal, and I timed out immediately as soon as the game started. I'm pretty sure another player was already in my seat by the time I entered. So fair enough, that makes sense. You know, offline play, big load time, but then the game runs fine. I mean, that's a testament to Rocket League. It's why it can run on portable systems. Freaking love this game. Again, I'm already declaring a win. Like, I'm playing Rocket League. It's offline, but I'm playing it and it runs smooth. It's just like the benchmarks. Once you're in, she's all sweet. So before leaving, I just had to try one more time while I had all this set up, selected online match, and I got in. I joined a game, and I proceeded to have the game of my life. I was MVP playing off of an iPod. Outstanding. Well, yeah, mate, this is like the best way to get more performance out of your computer, win more games, use more frames.
Is that the slang, mate?
That means, hey, everyone run out and get classic iPods to run your PCs on. You don't need M.2 SSDs anymore, mate. It's all right here, isn't it? It's really hard to sell to you how slow this computer was. Like, when I did the 1 terabyte iPod and I had to wait for all the tunes to sync on there again, that took forever. But that's different. I can just walk away and just let that do its thing. But with this thing, it was hours and hours and hours of having to check on it every 5 or 6 minutes. You double click a program and then wait 5 to 6 minutes, and then it will do something. And then you click and wait another 5 to 6 minutes. Like, here's the best way to settle it. Here's the regular SSD booting up. You know, 15 seconds and we're at the time. Here's the same system, but with an iPod 4th gen 60 gig as its hard drive. Yeah, like 4.5 minutes. And when you're at the clock, you don't just hit enter and log in. No. You hit enter and then wait 2 minutes. Then you can put your password in. And then maybe 7 minutes later, Steam will pop up to say that it's updating. And then maybe another 3 minutes after that, you might be able to click on Windows Explorer. 20-minute turnaround. You know, the last thing I did with this was install iTunes on to see if it would see itself inside the system. And when iTunes said that it needed to restart to finalize the installation, I audibly groaned at just the thought of watching it boot for another 20 minutes.
Oh, God. Oh, no. Oh no.
And no, it would not see itself in iTunes. You know, what a shame. It was worth trying because, yeah, this thing's formatted to be a Windows computer now, which is actually awesome to think that Windows 10 and Rocket League is in here somewhere. You know, the only thing that went wrong was Microsoft Edge. It just had a big old wig out at one point. That was the only thing that went wrong. It's just so typical in it. Microsoft makes terrible software, which is strange because it's nearly all they do. So do I recommend this? Oh yeah, mate, absolutely. Beat MVP in every game ever at more than the cost of an SSD, as it's a collectible. And as for this guy doing the flash modded pod, you know, I will get round to this because I do want to play with full-size PC drives in these anyways, so I've got a perfect excuse to come back and play Rocket League off of an iPod again. Hopefully, I can figure out how to do that. So, only one thing left to do, which is say, thanks so much for watching. Big thanks to my patrons, especially these smelly names right here. You know, $1 a month, I've got extra vids a week, and this week, since we've done really good with COVID here in SA, mate, we're gonna take a trip down to Cashies and we're gonna see what we can find there. So yeah, it's gonna be fun. But you know, don't worry, anything cool I find will make it into a main video anyways. So I'll see you guys all next time, yeah?